All right, welcome into Sports Bit Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy, Wednesday, April 20th. Deep dive today, part one coming up on the secret truth about NFL quarterbacks. The big game breakdown will be the three playoff games plus the Diamondbacks and the Giants. No bad beats, but there were plenty of bad bets. And we start in the NBA with the Celtics. 7 points in the first quarter. The fewest points scored in a playoff game since the shot clock era, going back to 1954, 1955. It was 24-3 Atlanta. We told you Corver would eviscerate him. He did. And then with 24-3, 6 minutes in, Atlanta didn't score the rest of the quarter. They led 24-7 at the end of the quarter. That's right. There were 4 points scored in 6 minutes of a playoff game, Teddy.
It speaks volumes about the Hawks defense. We've talked repeatedly on this show about how good Atlanta has been defensively over the back half of the season. And their full season defensive numbers are good. Post All-Star break defensive numbers were the best in the league. Better than San Antonio, better than Golden State. And it was sure pretty brilliant last night. Now Boston just 65 for 190 in the first two games of this series. That's in the 35% range. Just 16 of 63 on three-pointers. That's in the 25% range. The Hawks, 24 block shots. And boy, they've altered a lot more than 24 shots in this series. Look at this photo with Isaiah Thomas. Just unable to get good looks. But, Atlanta came to play last night. And, we were able to cash a winning play of the day ticket on the Hawks in that ball game, Paulie. But we didn't know Scott Foster was going to be the ref in that one.
We beat the mighty Scott Foster. The streak's over. It had been 13 straight wins for the road team in the playoffs. So you had a ticket in your pocket on Atlanta before you found out the news. What'd you do?
I held it. And that's the truth about trend betting for me. I know that the road team had won 13 straight games in the NBA playoffs when Scott Foster was a ref. That fact alone, was the only thing that made me have any interest in the Boston side. And I had all these other reasons why I liked the Atlanta side. One fact like that isn't enough to get me off a game. I had that ticket on the Hawks in my pocket, and I did not buy back on Boston, even with the Scott Foster information.
One more bad bet, at least with the NBA. The Grizzlies come out. They have 11 points in the first quarter. Both of these games were over after the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, they really were. And there's obviously a lot of first-round series that are over before they started. Maybe not the Oklahoma City series, but certainly when you're talking about the most of the teams that were priced at minus 1,000 or higher, they're having a fairly easy time of it. And of course, Boston comes out and scored 7 in the first quarter. Grizzlies come out and score 11 in the first quarter. Look, Memphis was plus 18 in that game. Some shops even had it 18.5 as the opener, although they did take money. They were plus 18 for a reason. That was the highest point spread in modern NBA playoff history for a reason. And again, if you're watching Sportsbet every day, you already know this stuff. We talked about it twice. Memphis not going to hit 2-pointers against San Antonio, not against that defense. The Grizzlies' defensive weakness comes against a 3, but Memphis doesn't hit threes. Second game in a row, the Grizzlies, and the effort was there. They just can't get any points against this offense.
No, the bad bets continue. How about 2 from Major League Baseball? Heavy steam on the Dodgers. Wood going back to Atlanta, got rocked.
Oh, my God, yeah. I mean, it was a classic off-pitcher, line goes nuts. The Dodgers opened minus 140 against Tehran. And then Williams Perez, who got lit up in his first 2 outings of the season, it was announced that Tehran was scratched and Perez was going to go. Opened 160, closed minus 215. That's some heavy steam. Good result for the house. Alex Wood, returning home to pitch in front of friends and family, got lit up. The Dodgers got blown out, and Perez didn't give up a run against that vaunted LA offense. Dodgers, bad bet last night.
Phillies blown out. They got lit up at home.
Yeah, the Phillies have lost at home. Over the last 5 days, they've lost at home 9-1, 8-1, 11-1, all since Friday. And yes, Philadelphia was favored over the Mets at a handful of shops last night, although they did close as slight home dogs. The market's falling in love with Vincent Velasquez a little bit too quickly. Mind you, Philadelphia has been favored 3 times already this year, all against the Padres. They did win 2 out of those 3.
Back to the NBA, both games over. Those were bad bets. I saw as high as 206 on the Atlanta game. And we ran through Memphis. Those were, if you had the overs there, you didn't have a chance.
Oh my God! I mean, there's nothing worse than being dead at the any bet that you have that's dead at the end of the first quarter or dead at the end of the first inning. You're like, what did I just do? If you bet an over in the NBA last night, you're rooting for overtime after one. That's never a good sign.
Or triple overtime if, well, it wasn't going to happen in the Spurs game.
No.
Or maybe both were blowouts. How about hockey? How about some bad bets here? If you had the home teams, the road teams went 4-0 in the NHL playoffs last night, including the Ducks, and that has been a moneymaker in the NHL playoffs. When the team loses the first two games at home, their season is on the line. Game 3 on the road. The last two times, the Ducks delivered and the Kings delivered. Game 3 in overtime against the Sharks. So I don't know, that's a rare occurrence, but the home teams go 0 for 4 last night. How about that?
Well, that's the thing about the NHL. I mean, we talk about how much home court is worth in the NBA or home field is worth in baseball or in football. Home ice in the hockey playoffs is worth very, very little. Don't ever get suckered into that, oh, they're going home, therefore they're going to win mentality. It's just nonsense. It's just bluster. Home ice is worth, little itty bitty bit in hockey, not very much.
I'm sure a lot of people thought that was going to be the case with the Blackhawks, and they lost. Again, big game breakdown up next. We'll get to the NBA playoffs coming up and the secret truth about NFL quarterbacks. That's straight ahead on SportsBit. Betting Insight today.
Visit SBRUFC.com to find the best odds and sportsbook bonuses available for UFC 197.
All right, time for big game breakdown. Let's get to the NBA playoffs. Charlotte against Miami. The Heat, 4.5, 199 at home. Deng has been a forgotten man in this Miami offense, but the Charlotte defense forgot about him Sunday afternoon. You look at these this graphic, these 2015-2016 splits, pre-All-Star break. Deng averaged 10.6 points per game, and he shot 43% from the field. Post-All-Star break, 15 points per game, 48.4% from the field. If Deng's knocking down shots, now he was 11 out of 13 on Sunday, but if he's knocking down shots, this Miami team is tough to beat and hard to guard, Teddy.
Yeah, they are. And certainly, since Joe Johnson joined the Heat, Deng has gotten a whole lot better. And you say, well, that's kind of odd. Why is that? Well, Johnson spaces the floor. He spreads the floor and gives Deng room to create. That's a difference maker. Now, these two teams have played twice in the month of April. Miami's only 1-1 in those games, but look at this graphic. When it comes to offensive execution, the Heat O versus the Hornets D. Well, let's see. The NBA best full season offense, the Warriors, 112.5 points per 100 possessions. Miami points per 100 in those two games against the Hornets, 126.8.
Oh.
There has not been an answer for Charlotte on the defensive end. But you have to wonder, Paul, a couple of days to adjust, tweak your defensive rotations, figure some stuff out. You think Steve Clifford's got a chance to put a defense together to slow down Miami?
I don't know. What he dropped 120 on him. What do you think he can do?
Well, here's a quote. Quote, "We couldn't guard them at all. That's what we've got to fix. We've got to try harder, number one. We have to have more readiness to play. And a lot of it, frankly, was basic principles. We've got to set a tone higher on the floor with ball pressure. We've got to be earlier with our talk, better with our organization." Now, it's worth noting, this total's gotten bet down like crazy. Open 203 and drop like a rock.
Yeah.
Now it's 199. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if it drops further on game day. I think we'll come back to this one when it comes to play of the day, Paul.
You got it. Pistons and the Cavs. Cleveland 10, 201 the total. It was the big three that did the damage in game one, and only their second playoff game together. They had reason to celebrate 81 points. So 81 points out of the big three. But they only won by 5 as Detroit knocked down 15 threes. And as we mentioned Monday, they had a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter. We think Van Gundy against Lou's a mismatch.
Yeah, and of course, Van Gundy trying to play the referee game, which always concerns me, whining about LeBron. Let's take a look at the quote. A couple of calls have upset our guys. His Piston players, they've got to understand, LeBron's LeBron. They're not going to call offensive fouls on him. He gets to do what he wants. Of course, Van Gundy got fined 25 grand for that particular comment, but there's some truth to it. And of course, LeBron's got a counter. He's coming right back. Quote, Stan has gotten the better of me in a playoff series before in his Orlando days, but it's not about me versus Stan. It's about his teams versus the teams that I've been on. And I'm not having any individual matchup with Stan or an individual matchup with Stanley Johnson or any other Stan they can possess. Of course, Stanley Johnson and LeBron got into it in a very physical way in Game 1. Stanley Johnson's quote, it's physical basketball. So on the other end, when I get the opportunity to throw James on the ground, it is what it is. He would do the same to me. Let me ask you this, Paulie. LeBron, who went at 5 or more free throw attempts in 15 of 20 playoff games last year, he only got 4 free throw attempts in Game 1. You're going to take over or under 4 LeBron free throw attempts game number 2?
I will go over.
Yeah, exactly.
But Van Gundy had a point. I thought those were 2 obvious offensive fouls. One of them was so obvious, Detroit was walking to the other end of the floor, and they called the foul on the Pistons.
And you think after he calls out the refs that the call's going to go differently this time?
No, you're right. Yep, you're right.
I mean, the thing that concerns me the most about Detroit, they brought their A game on Sunday. As you mentioned, they shot 50% from the floor. They hit 15 made threes. Only had 10 turnovers. Then again, they only forced 4 turnovers. The Cavs' big three, whatever they wanted, did whatever they wanted all game. I worry about Detroit being able to match what they did in Game 2 and Game 1, or match what they did in Game 1 when they play Game 2. But on the other hand, there have been 5 meetings between these two teams this year. The Cavs haven't won any of them by more than 8.
No, I see both sides of it. Are they going to get 28 and 13 out of Love again? Will Kyrie go for 30 plus? So, it's a great matchup. And
it is worth noting, Paulie, I want to jump in real quick here, that in the one playoff game last year where the Cavs' big three were healthy, they also won and covered. So now they're 2-0 in postseason games straight up and against the spread when they have Love, Irving, and LeBron all together on the court.
The late game, 7:30 Pacific tonight, Blazers and Clippers. Clippers 8.5, 209 the total. CP3 won the battle against Lillard. He beat him in every category. You look at this graphic, more points, more assists, more rebounds. He took it to him, and a big reason why the Clippers won. But maybe this is cause for concern or maybe a bad sign. CP3 led the Clippers in scoring, and that's not a good thing for the Clippers want to make a deep run in the postseason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they want Chris Paul to be a complementary scorer in that offense. They don't want him to be their leading scorer. So that's kind of a subtle bad sign, but it was a blowout win. I don't think you want to take too much negative from the Clips in that ball game. Lillard's a prideful guy, and he got badly outplayed by CP3 in the opener. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes up with a better effort here, but is that going to be enough? Because Portland really, they have their 2 guards and not much else. And it's certainly the Clips that have that front court edge. We got to talk about the total here, Paul.
Yep.
Remember that Game 1 total sitting at 173 with 5 minutes and 45 seconds left?
5:45 left. Yep. Then there were 37 points the rest of the way. I couldn't believe Stotts did that. He won hack a DJ down 17 with 5-6 minutes left.
Yeah, they could. That's the issue with the total in this series. I mean, not to mention that the backups go 3 for 3 on 3-pointers in the final 52 seconds. But the fact is, Stotts could use Haka Jordan at any time. Mm-hmm. He could use Haka Mbaamute if they want to. At any time. Another 40 to 50% free throw shooter. Though Haka Mbaamute doesn't quite roll off the tongue the way Haka Jack used to.
No.
That being said, it makes it very, very dicey to play this total one way or the other. You don't know if Portland's going to be forced into that situation of hack, or if the game's going to play out like the first one was going to, that would have stayed 15, 20, maybe even 25 points under the total.
Yep, well said there. I agree with that. Good thing the Clippers have to like was Blake played well, too, in Game 1. One Major League Baseball game we're going to touch on. Diamondbacks and the Giants. Greinke against Mad Bum. Giants at home, $1.40, 6.5, and everyone talks about splits with a pitcher, and this is one of the stranger things you're going to see. This is fascinating. When you look at Bumgarner's numbers, the one guy who's beat him up is Enrique Hernandez from the Dodgers. His batting average against Mad Bum is .833. He has 2 home runs, 2 doubles, and 5 at-bats. Against all other batters, they're hitting 220. And they have 3 doubles and 2 home runs in 70 at-bats. One guy has given him problems so far.
Yeah, and it's not like Enrique Hernandez is one of these guys who opposing pitchers are staying up at night biting their nails about.
No.
But, again, Hernandez, 4 extra base hits and 5 plate appearances against Bumgarner. And all other hitters, 5 extra base hits and 70 plate appearances. That's one of those bizarre things. I obviously wouldn't expect that to last forever, but it's just a fun thing to point out. Let's talk about Zach Greinke for a minute because, again, the pitching form is going to show 0-2 with a 6.75 ERA. He got rocked for 6 runs in 1 bad inning in Colorado. That's going to take a long time for the season-long ERA numbers to correct. Therefore, we're talking about a guy that has misleading numbers right now. Zach Greinke, he's still an ace at the top of his game, every bit as much as Bumgarner is.
Up next, the deep dive, the real secret about NFL quarterbacks, and the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting and Insight today.
Visit SBRUFC.com to find the best odds and sportsbook bonuses available for UFC 197.
All right, wrapping it up on SportsBit, play of the day coming up. Part 1 today, deep dive. We're talking draft, we're talking NFL quarterbacks. And around this time every year you hear Kiper, McShay, Kiper, big board, draft board, quarterbacks. I remember watching live when Kiper lost his mind because the Colts passed on Trent Dilfer, and he said he didn't know what they were going to do, what they were doing, because Dilfer was going to be a franchise quarterback. Teddy, what do you think of Kiper and McShay?
Well, look, I've worked for ESPN. I've written for ESPN, and I will tell you this. I don't blame these guys for punching out content because that's what you have to do when you work for ESPN and when you write for ESPN. They don't say, give me your strongest opinion. They say, give me opinions on this right now and have it ready by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So Kiper and McShay get paid to have opinions. They get paid to write. They get paid to spout. They do not get paid for being right or wrong with those opinions. Do not put any stock into anything that Mel Kiper or Todd McShay or Mayock or any of the 62 other draft experts are going to try to tell you. We're going to have a draft expert, a legitimate draft expert, on this show next week as a guest to help us with some of the props. But when it comes to this nonsense, Kiper, McShay, nuh-uh. Listen to us. We know what we're talking about.
Yeah, you'll hear some of these, run it down with these quarterbacks here. 2015 first round, Mariota Winston. 2014, Bortles, Teddy Bridgewater. Carr also went in the second round, but he was...
this whole list is guys that are drafted, first day or second day, the top quarterbacks taken.
And Carr had some hype behind him, too. 2013, EJ and Geno. 2012, Luck, Tannehill, Wilson, Osweiler. 2011, Newton, Gabbert, Dalton, Kaepernick. 2010, Bradford. 2009, Stafford and Sanchez. 2008, Matty Ice, Flacco, Henne. 2007, Jamarcus Russell, Quinn. 06, Young, Leinart, Cutler, Charlie Whitehurst. Oh, my God, Teddy.
Well, when you go through that list, again, you kind of blew through it. Take a look at the graphic here because you're going to see in the last 10 NFL drafts, you're going to see 3 stars, 3 elite quarterbacks that we can measure. Russell Wilson, the only starting quarterback in the NFL that's under 30 years old and has a Super Bowl ring. Andrew Luck, Cam Newton. So you got 3 elite players, and of the 3, one of them was Wilson, a third rounder.
Yeah.
Taken after 5 other guys, after Ryan Tannehill, well after Brock Osweiler, well after Nick Foles in that draft. That's all you need to know. So you got 3 stars in 8 years. Then you have 3 above average. I'll take them, guys. Ryan, Flacco, Dalton. You don't have a quarterback. You'll take any one of those 3. You don't know if any of them's going to... Well, Flacco's got a ring. They're capable. So, 3 superstars, 3 well above average guys. The rest, you've got a handful of serviceable quarterbacks, your Cutlers, your Staffords, your Tannehills of the world. You're better off than the Brown situation. Those guys aren't going to win you any Super Bowls.
Yep.
And the rest of the guys on the list, backups or out of the league, which tells us one thing, Paulie. What's the secret truth about the NFL?
All these guys stink.
There are no fucking quarterbacks. Okay? That's the secret truth about NFL quarterbacks. There aren't any.
No.
And it's going to get worse.
I know.
We'll talk about that tomorrow, but let's talk about the mistakes. Again, these are the pundits. These are guys they've been to the combine and they're all experienced veterans. They have coaching staffs and scouting staffs. Who are they going to pick? Let's see. You got Brandon Whedon going ahead of Russell Wilson. You got Johnny Manziel ahead of Bridgewater and Carr.
Yep.
You have Locker and Ponder ahead of Kaepernick and Dalton. We can go on and on and on with all the mistakes that get made, Paul.
Yeah.
They get made every single year from the people that know the most about football.
The Seahawks did do a good job on Wilson. I'll give them credit there. But you look, and I got ahead of myself. Look at this. Bust after bust. These are first-round guys. Jamarcus Russell, Quinn, Young, Leinart, Locker, Ponder, Gabbard, EJ, Sanchez, Josh Freeman, Tebow, Whedon. All first-rounders. Cleveland, they're on that list 3 times. And remember, they took Tim Couch number 1, too. So that's 3 quarterbacks right there where Cleveland's on the list with a swing and the miss. And that'll set you back 3-4 years if you keep doing that.
And every one of these guys, whether it's Jamarcus Russell, Brady Quinn, Vince Young, Matt Leinart, Jake Locker, Christian Ponder, Blaine Gabbert, EJ Manuel, the Sanchez, Josh Freeman, Tim Tebow, Brandon Whedon, Johnny Manziel, they're all first-rounders. And they were all ultra hyped. Oh, great prospect. This guy's going to lead his team to the next level.
Sure.
Yeah. And some of them showed promise. Vince Young after a couple years. Hey, he's going to be pretty good. Josh Freeman after a couple years. Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah.
Mark Sanchez after a couple years. Oh, look at this guy. Every one of them a complete and utter bust in the long term. And those are the first rounders. Paul, the second rounders are worse. Trust me. They're way worse. There's so many of them who are complete busts, unless you think that Jimmy Clausen's the guy.
No.
Remember Pat White? What kind of great NFL career he's going to have out of West Virginia?
Yep.
Brian Brom or John Beck out of BYU. Tavares Jackson's going to be the answer in Minnesota. The second rounders are worse than the first rounders, and the first rounders stink.
There's only 3 guys on that list that are still in the league on the first rounders. Oh, man. I'm looking forward to part 2 coming up tomorrow.
One last thing on this. We have to talk about this.
Uh-huh.
The pundits know nothing. The measurables mean nothing. The game film shows nothing. You're going to hear the draft gurus talking about arm strength. Really? It's more about what's in the ears, in between the ears, than any other factor, and that's really hard to predict. Great quarterbacks walking into bad spots, it can ruin your career. What happens if Elway doesn't hold out and he spends his career in Baltimore? A bad offensive line can ruin a career. Think about Carr the Elder, David Carr's older brother, Derek, had not a good NFL career because his offensive line stunk. An injury, a bad locker room. There are so many things that can derail college quarterbacks, and we haven't even gotten to NFL defenses yet. We'll get to those tomorrow.
Very good. All right, we should retire. We beat Scott Foster last night. Where are we going, play of the day?
Let's go to Miami and Charlotte and take a look at that under 199. This is a statement game for Clifford and company's defense. I think Charlotte's going to show on the defensive end here. Miami, they don't want to push the pace. They don't push the pace. One of the slowest paced teams in the league this year. We've seen the high-scoring games the last 2 meetings because of offensive efficiency. I say that efficiency drops here. Look for Miami and Charlotte. Game number 527, 528 to stay under 199. See if we can cash this one with relative ease.
Very good. Let's keep it going. Nice job. We're back tomorrow. More NFL and NBA playoffs on SportsBit. Betting Insight today.